The Denver Broncos arrived at Sunday Night Football carrying far more than a winning streak. They arrived carrying the weight of expectation and the responsibility to prove to the entire league that this resurgence is not a coincidence, not a temporary spark, not a fragile moment in the schedule, but a real transformation born from disciplined urgency and a deep cultural reset inside the organization that has taken root over the last 2 seasons under Sean Payton. And that is now beginning to show itself as one of the most convincing turnarounds in recent AFC history. And when a team that started the 2025 season with a 1-to-record suddenly evolves into a powerhouse, riding an 8-game winning streak, the entire narrative of the conference shifts because Denver is not just fighting for relevance, it is fighting for control of the AFC race, fighting for the coveted number 1 seed, and fighting for a chance to dictate the postseason path through the altitude of mile-high where opponents historically withered under the physical and psychological pressure of playoff football in Denver. And this is why the matchup against the Washington Commanders of Landover carries a significance that extends far beyond simple standings, because the Broncos enter this game not as a team stumbling into momentum, but as a team intentionally building a playoff identity piece by piece, series by series, and week by week. And now they face an opponent whose record hides the truth that Washington, despite the chaos, injuries, and inconsistencies, maintains a rushing attack that demands respect, a system built by Cliff Kingsbury around patience, zone principles, and physicality that can humble any defensive front that dares to underestimate it. And Denver understands fully that if it wants to keep pace with the surging New England Patriots, who sit at 10 on a 9-game streak, the Broncos must treat every remaining matchup, including this one, as a playoff rehearsal with razor-sharp execution and zero margin for emotional lapses. And the Commanders come off their Week 12 bye with frustration boiling after 6 consecutive losses, which makes them dangerous, because desperate teams often lean into fundamentals, and for Washington the fundamental is their ground attack, powered by Chris Rodriguez Jr. and Jake Merritt, who have combined for efficiency, balance, and unexpected explosiveness even with the roster crumbling around them. And this is where the first core truth of the matchup emerges with absolute clarity. If Denver cannot strangle the Commanders' rushing attack at its root, the entire game script becomes vulnerable, because allowing Washington to dictate tempo, field position, and third down rhythm immediately complicates what Denver does best, which is controlling possession through structure and forcing opponents into predictable passing situations where the Broncos' defense thrives. And this is not the same defense that got gassed by Jonathan Taylor back in Week 2, because from Week 3 onward the Broncos' front has been one of the stingiest in the league, with Zach Allen, DJ Jones, and John Franklin Myers bulldozing gaps, owning leverage, and freeing the second level for linebackers and safeties like Talanoa Hufanga, whose instincts and aggression have turned him into a roaming avalanche capable of blowing up runs before they even form. And if Denver wins that battle early, the rest of the night tilts heavily in their favor, because Marcus Mariota at this point in his veteran career depends on rhythm, security, and structure. And if Washington falls behind on down and distance, Mariota becomes limited, predictable, and pressurized, and Denver knows how to exploit that with calculated defensive distortions, disguised shells, and collapsing edges that force quick decisions and potential errors. And while shutting down the run is the first critical key, the second revolves around the mental duel at the line of scrimmage between Bo Nix and Bobby Wagner, in a generational contrast that embodies everything compelling about NFL strategy, because Wagner at 35 remains a master field general, a future Hall of Fame linebacker who understands not only assignments but the emotional momentum of games, and who serves as Dan Quinn's voice on every defensive snap, with the green dot on his helmet signaling not only responsibility but trust. And when a veteran like Wagner aligns across from a young quarterback who is becoming the face of a franchise, the collision point becomes psychological, not just physical. And Bo Nix arrives to this moment carrying 8 fourth-quarter comebacks into seasons, something no quarterback has done since 1950. And this is where the magnitude of Sunday night comes into focus, because Nix has reached the stage where development is no longer about mechanics or arm talent, but about mastery, about anticipation, about the ability to diagnose a defense with such precision that the opponent begins reacting to him instead of the other way around. And facing Wagner on prime time is exactly the type of challenge that forges elite quarterbacks, because Wagner will disguise blitzes, shift fronts, rotate coverage shells, and attempt to bait Nix into mistakes that can swing momentum. But Nix has shown repeatedly that he thrives in chaos, adjusting plays with kill calls, identifying mismatches, and using Peyton's system to manipulate leverage before the ball is even snapped, and the Broncos will rely heavily on these mind battles. Because if Knicks wins at the line of scrimmage, Denver wins the flow of the game. And winning the flow means unleashing the third critical pathway to victory, the expanding role of rookie wide receiver Pat Bryant, who represents one of the most important emerging weapons in this offense and who is poised for a breakout opportunity precisely because defenses have become so consumed by Troy Franklin and Cortland Sutton that Bryant naturally becomes the forgotten threat in coverage. And this is the exact type of scenario where Sean Payton thrives, because he designs games around exploiting the neglected weakness of opponents. And Washington's secondary is one of the most vulnerable in the league, allowing nearly 250 passing yards per game and surrendering explosive plays due to miscommunication, depth issues, and injuries that have forced constant rotations. And after their humiliating loss to Detroit, Dan Quinn had no choice but to take over defensive play calling, a sign of structural instability and uncertainty, which is the worst possible environment when facing a confident, efficient, and aggressive offense like Denver. And Bryant, at 6'2", 204 pounds, brings the type of physicality and boundary precision that can punish poorly aligned secondaries, especially on intermediate routes and play action concepts where his timing with Knicks has improved dramatically. And if the Commanders decide to allocate resources to Franklin and Sutton, Bryant could inevitably become the target funnel, and on a national stage like Sunday Night Football in front of the entire country, this becomes the perfect stage for him to erupt and validate everything Peyton believes he could become, and all these layers combine into one central truth: the Denver Broncos cannot simply walk into Landover on reputation alone. They must impose identity with clarity and force. They must show the league that this winning streak is not luck, but evolution, not coincidence, but construction, not momentum, but destiny. And a victory over Washington would not merely extend a streak, it would solidify the Broncos as a complete team capable of winning in multiple styles, capable of imposing terms on any opponent, capable of standing toe-to-toe with New England in the battle for the AFC. And while analysts may focus on statistics or matchups, what truly defines this moment is belief in a locker room that survived early adversity, belief in a coaching staff that rebuilt discipline from the ground up, belief in a quarterback who has become the heartbeat of the franchise, and belief in a defense that has rediscovered dominance. And this channel exists for fans who feel that belief, who understand the magnitude of what Denver is building, and who live and breathe this game with passion, depth, and knowledge. So join the conversation, share your voice, and help build a community that celebrates the Broncos with the same fire that the team brings to the field every single week.